The arrogant queen. The Valkari throne room was a place of power. Towering stone pillars stretched high into the ceiling, glowing with the energy of ancient technology. Massive banners, woven from the silk of star-born creatures, hung from the walls, each symbolizing a battle won, a species conquered. And at the very center, on a throne of dark obsidian, carved from the remains of a fallen world, sat Queen Serathis. Her piercing golden eyes scanned the grand hall, filled with Valkari nobles, warriors, and officials. Serathis was bored. A queen above all to her, this ceremony was just another display of power. Another reminder that the Valkari were superior. Stronger, smarter, unchallenged. For centuries, they had ruled the stars, taking what they wanted, bending weaker species to their will. And now, a new species had caught their attention. Humans. Serathis scoffed at the thought. Humans were small, fragile things, not warriors, not conquerors. They were nothing more than a fleeting curiosity in the vastness of the galaxy. They had some technology, some spirit, but ultimately, they would fall like all the others. Her voice echoed through the hall, commanding yet amused. "Bring in the human." The audience murmured as the prisoner was escorted inside. A different kind of human. The guards shoved him forward, making him stumble before the throne. His name was Daniel Carter. Tall for a human, his body bore the marks of captivity, but his eyes were clear, unbroken. He didn't cower like the others. He didn't beg or look away. Instead, he smiled. Serathis tilted her head, studying him. A human with spirit, amusing. Daniel didn't react. He simply met her gaze, as if looking at an equal. Serathis felt a flicker of something. Irritation. Intrigue. It didn't matter. She leaned forward, resting her chin on her hand. "Tell me, human, do you understand where you are?" Daniel smirked. "I do." A room full of people trying too hard to look important. The audience gasped. The guards tensed, gripping their weapons. But Serathis, she laughed. A deep, genuine laugh. It had been a long time since someone had dared to mock her so openly, and she found it refreshing. The first test. Serathis stood, stepping down from her throne. Her long crimson robes flowed behind her, and the room fell into silence. She walked around Daniel, circling him like a predator assessing prey. "Tell me, human, why do you not kneel?" Daniel shrugged. "I don't kneel for people who think strength comes from sitting on a big chair." Serathis smirked. Brave words from a prisoner. Daniel's expression didn't change. "I was a prisoner the moment you saw me as weak, the moment you took interest." He let the words linger. "That's when I became something more." Serathis felt an odd thrill at his defiance. This was not normal human behavior. Most species, when faced with the Valkari, either submitted or perished. But this man, he didn't fear her, and that made him dangerous. She gestured toward her royal guard. "Fight him." The audience cheered as a massive Valkari warrior stepped forward, easily twice Daniel's size, his arms thick with muscle and scars. Daniel glanced at Serathis. "You're serious." She smiled. "Amuse me." A fight no one expected. The guard charged, swinging a brutal armored fist. Daniel dodged effortlessly, sidestepping with precision. The crowd gasped. A human should not have been fast enough to evade a Valkari warrior. Serathis leaned forward, watching closely. The guard attacked again, this time with a spinning kick meant to shatter bone. Daniel didn't block. He didn't counter. He moved. Like a dancer, he slipped beneath the strike, using the warrior's own momentum against him, sending him crashing to the ground. The crowd fell silent. Serathis felt something unexpected. Excitement. A game begins. Daniel stood tall, breathing calmly. The warrior did not rise. For the first time in her reign, Serathis had witnessed a human defeat a Valkari elite. And worse, he didn't even seem surprised. He met her gaze again, a glint of amusement in his eyes. Still think humans are weak? Serathis didn't answer immediately. She could have him executed. She could punish him for his defiance. But instead, she smiled. For the first time in her life, she had found something she never expected. A human who was worth her time. A challenge between equals. The Valkari throne room was deathly silent. Hundreds of warriors, nobles, and high-ranking officials stood frozen, their disbelief etched across their faces. A human had just defeated one of their own. A mere prisoner had outmaneuvered a Valkari warrior, a feat considered impossible. And yet, Daniel Carter stood victorious. He wasn't out of breath. He wasn't injured. He just smirked, as if none of this surprised him. Queen Serathis watched him carefully, her golden eyes gleaming with intrigue. For the first time in her life, she was impressed by a human. And she hated it. The Queen's dilemma. Serathis stepped forward, her long crimson robes trailing behind her. The crowd parted instantly, afraid to be in her way. She stood before Daniel, looking him over as if inspecting a rare creature she did not yet understand. "You are interesting." Daniel gave her a slow, lazy smile. "I'll take that as a compliment." Serathis arched an eyebrow. "I did not say it was." The crowd chuckled nervously, sensing the Queen's growing amusement. Serathis tilted her head. "Where did you learn to fight like that?" Daniel shrugged. "Experience. Humans aren't as weak as you think." Serathis let out a small laugh, but it wasn't mocking. It was curious. For years, humans had been dismissed as fragile, unworthy of real attention. But now, she wanted to know more. A dangerous game. She turned and walked back toward her throne, speaking over her shoulder. "I could have you executed for humiliating my warrior." Daniel didn't even flinch. "You could, but you won't." Serathis stopped. Slowly, she turned back toward him, her golden eyes narrowing. "You seem confident for a man in chains." Daniel met her gaze, unshaken. "I'm still alive, aren't I?" Serathis smirked. "For now." She sat down on her throne, resting her chin on her hand. "Tell me, Daniel Carter, what should I do with you?" The offer. Daniel took a slow breath. He had played many dangerous games in his life. But this was the deadliest yet. One wrong word, and he would be killed. One misstep, and he would be just another forgotten prisoner. So he took the only path that made sense. He played her game. "You could kill me, but what would that prove?" Serathis blinked. The crowd stirred. No one spoke to the Queen like this. Daniel continued. "I just proved the humans can hold their own. You spent your whole life thinking we were weak. Asterisk, 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 you were wrong." Serathis' fingers tapped against the armrest of her throne. Her expression was unreadable. Then she leaned forward. "And what do you want, human?" A bold request. Daniel smiled. "A chance." Serathis narrowed her eyes. "A chance for what?" Daniel took a step forward, and the guards instantly raised their weapons. Serathis held up a hand. They'd back down immediately. Daniel met her gaze. "A chance to prove that humans are worth more than being your prisoners." The hall erupted into shocked whispers. Serathis leaned back, amusement flickering in her expression. "And if I refuse?" Daniel grinned. "Then I guess you'll never know what else we're capable of." The Queen studied him, measured him, and then, after a long silence, she laughed. A deep, rich sound that sent chills down the spines of everyone present, because no one knew if it was a laugh of amusement or a laugh of danger. A Queen's decision. Serathis stood once more. Her golden eyes burned with something new. Not anger, not mockery. Interest. "Very well, Daniel Carter." The room fell silent. "You wish to prove humanity's worth." She smirked. "Then let's see if you survive the next test." She clapped her hands, and the guards dragged Daniel away. His fate was now sealed. And for the first time in her life, Queen Serathis felt something unfamiliar. Anticipation. The night that changed everything. The Valkari Palace was built to inspire fear. Sharp, angular towers rose high into the sky, their dark metal reflecting the cold light of distant stars. Inside, the great halls stretched endlessly, filled with banners of conquest, trophies from fallen enemies, and walls that whispered of 1,000 victories. And yet, for the first time in its long, proud history, the palace had a human guest, a test of will. Daniel Carter had been given a choice, or at least what passed as a choice among the Valkari. Queen Serathis, in her infinite amusement, had ordered him to survive. His test was simple: survive a night alone. No guards, no chains, no locked doors. Just him and the entire Valkari Palace, filled with warriors who despised him. It was a game, of course. Serathis wanted to see if he would run, if he would cower, if he would fail. Instead, Daniel did something unexpected. He stayed. The warrior queen watches. Serathis sat alone in her private chamber, watching him through a hidden surveillance feed. She had expected fear. Instead, Daniel walked through the palace like he belonged there. He wasn't hiding. He wasn't afraid. If anything, he looked curious, like a man studying his enemy. Serathis found herself leaning forward, intrigued. Her golden eyes narrowed. "What are you planning, human?" An unexpected meeting. Daniel wasn't planning anything. But as he explored, he found himself wandering into a massive hall. It was different from the others. There were no weapons here, no trophies, no banners of war. Instead, it was a library. Ancient books, digital scrolls, holographic tablets, knowledge from thousands of years of conquest. Daniel smirked. So they do more than fight. He stepped forward, running his fingers over the strange, alien symbols carved into the walls. And then, "I did not expect to find you here." Daniel turned. Serathis stood in the doorway, watching him. Alone. No guards, no weapons, just her. For the first time, she wasn't looking at him like a prisoner or a test subject. She was looking at him like something else, a dangerous conversation. Serathis slowly walked toward him, her crimson robes flowing behind her. "Of all places, you chose the library." Daniel shrugged. "Figured I should learn something before I die." Serathis smirked. "And what have you learned?" Daniel turned to face her fully. "That you Valkari love your wars." Serathis chuckled. "We do." Daniel's expression didn't change. "But that's not all you are, is it?" Serathis paused. That was not the answer she expected. "Explain." Daniel crossed his arms. "You've built an empire on fear, on strength, but you don't just destroy. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. You keep records. You learn. You adapt." His gaze met hers, steady. "You conquer because you don't want to be forgotten." The air between them shifted. For the first time, Serathis felt exposed. He had seen through her empire, through everything the Valkari stood for. And for some reason, that unsettled her. A moment neither expected. Serathis stepped closer, her golden eyes locked onto his. "You think you understand us?" Daniel smirked. "I think I understand you." Serathis exhaled slowly. She had met thousands of warriors, but none had ever looked at her like this. Like she was more than just a queen. Like she was more than just a symbol of power. Like she was a person. Daniel's voice was quieter now. "Why did you really come here tonight?" Serathis hesitated. She didn't know the answer, and that terrified her. But instead of leaving, she took another step closer. The night that changed everything. The silence between them was thick with tension. Daniel didn't move. Neither did she. For the first time in her life, Queen Serathis didn't feel in control. And yet, she didn't stop. Her voice was softer when she spoke. "I wanted to see if you were different. Daniel held her gaze. And what do you think? Serathis didn't answer, because deep down she already knew, and she hated that answer. She hated that she was drawn to him, but most of all, she hated that for the first time, she didn't want him to die. The unthinkable truth. The Valkari palace was silent, not because it was empty, but because something had changed. Deep within her private chambers, Queen Serathis sat alone, staring at a data pad, her fingers gripping the edge too tightly. The screen displayed a medical scan, a report from her royal physicians, a truth that should have been impossible. And yet, it was real. She was pregnant. And worse, the father was human. A queen in denial. Serathis' breath was slow and controlled, but her mind was spinning. She had mocked humans, dominated them, conquered them. They were beneath her. And yet, there was a life growing inside her, a child that was half human. Her entire existence, her identity, her empire, everything told her that this could not happen, should not happen. And yet, here she was, a secret that could destroy her. She tossed the datapad aside, pacing the room. If the Valkari High Council discovered this, she would be challenged. A queen who bore a human's child would be seen as weak, unfit to rule. The council would demand the child be removed. Or worse, they would demand her execution. Serathis felt something unexpected rise in her chest. Not fear, fury. They had no right to dictate what she did with her own body, her own child, her own future. But there was one problem. She had spent her entire life believing in their laws. Now, for the first time, she was the one who had broken them. Summoning the human, there was only one person she could turn to, and he had no idea what was coming. She sent a single command through her private channel. Bring Daniel Carter to my chambers. Now. Minutes later, the doors slid open. Daniel walked in, calm as ever. His usual cocky smirk was in place, but the moment he saw her expression, he hesitated. All right, he said slowly. That's not your I'm about to kill you face. So what's wrong? Serathis didn't answer immediately. Instead, she turned, picking up the datapad. She tossed it to him. Daniel caught it easily, glancing at the screen. His eyes scanned the report. Then, he went still, completely, utterly still. He read it again. Then a third time. Finally, he let out a slow breath. Well, that's new. A conversation they never expected. Serathis stalked toward him, her golden eyes burning. Explain. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Explain what? This is biology, not engineering. Serathis growled. Humans and Valkari are not supposed to be genetically compatible. Daniel tilted his head. And yet, here we are. Serathis clenched her fists. You don't understand. This is impossible. Daniel sighed. Look, I get it. This is a shock. But if it's happening, it means something your people thought was impossible, isn't? Serathis hated that answer, because it meant the laws of her people were wrong. It meant her empire was built on a lie. The human's reaction. Daniel exhaled, running a hand through his hair. Then, he did something unexpected. He smiled. Serathis stared at him in disbelief. Why are you smiling? Daniel chuckled. Because I think it's kind of funny. Serathis' rage flared. Funny. This is my greatest humiliation. My empire. Daniel cut her off. You think this is humiliation? You're looking at this all wrong. Serathis' breath caught. Daniel stepped closer, his voice calm but firm. You're acting like this is the end of something. He placed a hand on her desk, meeting her gaze. What if it's the beginning? A choice that changes everything. Serathis turned away, pacing. Her entire life, she had believed in Valkari's superiority. She had mocked humans. And now, she carried a child that would shatter everything she believed. But deep inside her, Something stirred. Something she didn't want to name. Something dangerously close to hope. She turned back to Daniel. No one can know. Daniel raised an eyebrow. For how long? Serathis' jaw tightened. For as long as possible. Daniel watched her for a long moment. Then, he nodded. All right, but you know this won't stay a secret forever. Serathis exhaled. I know. Her golden eyes burned. And when the time comes, I will decide what happens next. Daniel smirked. You say that like you actually have control over this. Serathis growled. Daniel laughed. For the first time since discovering the truth, Serathis felt something close to peace. A queen's greatest fear, the Valkari throne room, was never meant to feel small. It was vast, designed to make all who stood within it feel insignificant beneath the power of the throne. And yet, for the first time in her life, Queen Serathis felt trapped within her own empire. She sat upon her throne, expression blank, as her high council debated around her. They argued about war, resources, expansion, but Serathis heard none of it, because all she could think about was the child growing inside her, a child that should not exist, a child that could destroy everything, the burden of a secret. Serathis had always been certain of her place in the universe. She was a warrior queen, a ruler of the Valkari dominion, a being of pure strength and superiority. And now she was a mother to something that defied the very foundation of her rule. Her hands curled into fists as she stared down at her council. If they knew, if they even suspected, they would tear her from the throne. They would demand the child be removed. And if she refused, they would kill her. A desperate decision. She needed to act. She needed to eliminate the threat. Not the child. Not yet. The real threat. The one person who could expose her secret. Daniel Carter. Serathis summoned her royal guard. Her voice was sharp, unwavering. Take the human to the execution chambers. Make it public. The guards hesitated, confused by the sudden command. Daniel had been kept alive for weeks. Now, the queen wanted him dead. But no one questioned Serathis. Not if they wished to live. The guards bowed. As you command, my queen. Serathis watched them go, her golden eyes cold. This was the only way. She could not risk him speaking. She could not risk the truth coming out. And yet, why did her chest feel tight? A choice she couldn't make. The guards arrived at Daniel's cell. He looked up from where he sat, arms folded behind his head, calm as ever. Let me guess, she finally made up her mind. The guards said nothing. They only unlocked his restraints and dragged him down the corridors, through the halls, through the same palace he had walked freely in just days ago. And yet, even as he was pulled toward his death, Daniel did not look afraid. Not once. A change of heart. Serathis stood on the execution balcony, her expression unreadable. Below, thousands of Valkari warriors gathered, waiting to witness the human's end. Her people had never respected humans. They would not question this. It would be seen as a queen disposing of a worthless creature, a reminder of Valkari dominance. The executioner stood ready. Daniel was forced to his knees. The energy blade hovered over his throat. And then, the executioner looked to Serathis, awaiting her command. Serathis opened her mouth to speak, and nothing came out. Her fingers curled against the cold stone railing. Everything in her mind told her to finish it, to end the risk, to erase the problem before it could ruin her. But her heart betrayed her. She saw his smirk, his unwavering confidence, even in the face of death. And she realized something horrifying. She didn't want to lose him. Her hands trembled. She had never hesitated before. She had killed without remorse, without regret. But this was different. This was him. And for the first time in her reign, Queen Serathis disobeyed her own law. The unthinkable command. Her voice rang through the air. Sharp, unrelenting. Stop. The executioner froze. The crowd whispered. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Changing your mind, Your Majesty. Serathis' golden eyes burned as she looked at him. You live. For now. The murmurs grew louder. The council would demand an explanation. Her people would question her decision. She had just risked everything. But as Daniel stood, meeting her gaze without fear, she knew. There was no turning back. A mother, not just a queen. The Valkari throne room had never been so tense. The moment Queen Serathis spared Daniel's life, the entire empire felt the shift. Her council whispered. Her warriors exchanged glances. Her people questioned her judgment. For centuries, she had ruled with unquestioned authority. Now, they were beginning to doubt. And Serathis knew doubt was more dangerous than war. The High Council's ultimatum. Within hours, the Valkari High Council gathered, demanding answers. The most powerful advisors in the empire, all warriors, all cold, all calculating, stood before her throne, their expressions unreadable. One of them, Councillor Valkari, stepped forward. His voice was calm, dangerous. My queen, you spared the human. It was not a question. It was an accusation. Serathis remained silent. Another councillor, Ishana, a female nearly as feared as Serathis herself, crossed her arms. The people are watching. They wonder if you've grown. Soft. Serathis' golden eyes flashed. Soft. She had spent her entire life proving her strength. And yet, she had saved him. Not because of weakness, but because of something else. Something she didn't want to name. The choice that could end her rule. Valkari stepped forward. We demand an explanation, my queen. If the human does not die, then what is he to you? The air thickened. This was a trap. If she admitted she had spared Daniel for personal reasons, she would lose respect. If she lied, the council would see through her. She had always ruled by absolute dominance. And now, for the first time, she had to choose a different path. Serathis exhaled slowly. Then, she stood. She walked down the steps of her throne, until she stood at eye level with Valkari. Then, in a voice that left no room for argument, she spoke. The human is mine. Gasps rippled through the chamber. Valkari's jaw clenched. Yours. Serathis' gaze burned. Mine. My concern. My decision. My responsibility. Her voice cut through the room like a blade. And if anyone dares question my rule again, I will remind them why I sit on this throne. A heavy silence followed. Then, one by one, the council members bowed. They didn't understand, but they feared her. And for now, that was enough. A hidden truth. The council had accepted her decision, but the problem had not disappeared. Because the secret inside her, the child growing in her womb, would not stay hidden forever. And once it was discovered, her rule would end. Or worse, the Valkari would demand its death. She couldn't allow that. Which meant only one thing. She had to prepare for war. Not against an enemy. Not against an empire. But against her own people. Daniel's response. Serathis returned to her private chambers, her mind a storm of thoughts. She expected Daniel to be waiting. She expected anger, confusion, demands for answers. Instead, he was sitting at her table, feet propped up, smirking like he had already figured everything out. So, he said casually, "On yours, huh?" Serathis' jaw tightened. It was the only way to keep you alive. Daniel chuckled. Well, when you put it that way, I feel special. Serathis exhaled sharply, stepping closer. You think this is amusing? My own council is watching me like a predator watches wounded prey. Daniel finally dropped the smirk. His voice softened. I know, Serathis. She froze. He had never called her by her name before. Not Queen. Not Your Majesty. Just Serathis. She didn't hate it. The growing connection. Daniel stood, moving closer. You took a risk for me. Serathis lifted her chin. You are still a problem I need to solve. Daniel smiled. Yeah, but I'm your problem now. She hated that he was right. And she hated even more that she didn't mind. For years, she had looked at humans with mockery, contempt. Now, she looked at Daniel and saw something else. Something she didn't want to admit. Something she couldn't run from anymore. The Empire's betrayal. The Valkari Empire had never been ruled by mercy. For centuries, it had thrived on conquest, strength, and absolute control. A queen was respected not for her kindness, but for her ruthlessness. And now Queen Serathis carried a secret that could shatter everything. A child. A child that was half human. A child that would be seen as a blasphemy against Valkyrie purity. A child that her own people would never accept. And worst of all, her council had begun to suspect. The assassination attempt. It happened at dusk. Serathis stood alone on her balcony, watching the twin moons rise over her empire. Her thoughts swirled like a storm. Daniel, the child. The inevitable war that loomed between her duty and her heart. Then, a whisper of movement. Too fast. Too quiet. A shadow moved behind her, blade flashing in the dim light. Serathis spun, but too late. The dagger slashed toward her abdomen, aimed at the child. Her golden eyes widened in shock. And then, in a blur, Daniel was there, a life for a life. Daniel tackled the assassin, the blade slicing his side instead. Serathis did not freeze. She did not hesitate. Her training, her instincts, her fury exploded all at once. One strike. One brutal, precise strike to the assassin's throat. They collapsed, lifeless. The dagger clattered to the floor. And then, silence. The breaking point. Serathis stood panting, trembling, hands stained with blood. Daniel clutched his bleeding wound, but his expression was calm. Amused, even. So, you still think they don't know? Serathis' breath hitched. The council had ordered this. They weren't waiting for proof anymore. They had already decided. And now, they would come for her. For the child. For everything she had chosen to protect. She turned to Daniel, heart pounding. We have to leave. The Queen's rebellion. Daniel blinked. I'm sorry. What? Serathis was already moving, summoning her personal guard. Her most loyal warriors, those who would die for her without question. We leave. Tonight. The guards exchanged glances. This was madness. A queen did not run. A queen did not abandon her throne. But Serathis was not just a queen anymore. She was a mother. And she would burn the entire empire to the ground before she let them take her child. The council's betrayal, before they could escape. The palace doors climbed open. The High Council entered, flanked by dozens of armored warriors. Valkari, the most ambitious of them all, stepped forward. His voice was calm, cold, certain. My queen, you have been compromised. Serathis' jaw clenched. The air crackled with tension. Daniel, still bleeding, leaned close to her. I'm guessing they didn't come to talk. Serathis' golden eyes burned. No, they came to take everything from me. A throne in flames. The council had made their choice. But so had Serathis. She did not beg. She did not surrender. She drew her blade. And with a voice that shook the palace, she gave her final comment. Kill anyone who stands against me. Her loyal warriors moved instantly. The council's soldiers rushed forward. And just like that, the Valkari Empire fell into civil war. The Queen's last war. The Valkari capital burned. Flames licked at the sky as explosions shattered once mighty towers. The streets were filled with chaos. Valkari warriors fighting Valkari warriors. The empire that had ruled the stars with absolute power had turned against itself. All because of one truth. Their queen carried a human child, and she had chosen to protect it. The war for survival. Serathis fought like a goddess of war. Her golden armor, once worn to intimidate, was now splattered with the blood of those who had once sworn loyalty to her. Her blade sang through the air, cutting down those who tried to stand between her and freedom. Daniel fought beside her, wounded but relentless. He wasn't as fast. He wasn't as strong. But he was human, and humans never gave up. Serathis had seen that stubbornness before. Now she needed it to survive. The council's final stand. They reached the palace gates, where the final force awaited them. The High Council stood at the entrance, flanked by an army of elite warriors. Valkari stepped forward, eyes burning with hatred. "You have betrayed everything, Serathis." Serathis did not hesitate. "No, I have chosen something greater." Valkari snarled, "A half-blood abomination. You would throw away an empire for that." Serathis's grip on her blade tightened. "I would throw away 1,000 empires before I let you touch my child." The battle began. A fight that decides everything. Blades clashed. Energy blasts tore through the air. Daniel fought beside Serathis, dodging, weaving, using his speed, his instincts, his sheer will to survive. Serathis cut through her former allies with a warrior's grace, each movement fueled by rage and desperation. For the first time in her life, she fought not for power, not for honor, but for love. And then, she reached Valkari, the death of an empire. Valkari fought like the warrior he was, brutal, precise, deadly. But Serathis was faster, stronger, and she had something to fight for. A single strike, her blade pierced his chest. Valkari staggered back, eyes wide in shock. He collapsed, gasping his final words. "You have doomed us all." Serathis did not watch him die. She turned to Daniel, breathless. "We have to leave. Now." The final escape. With the council defeated, their forces fell into chaos. Serathis and Daniel fought their way to the docks, where a single stolen warship waited. As they boarded, alarms blared across the city. The empire was fracturing. Some would swear loyalty to Serathis. Others would hunt her to the ends of the stars. As the ship lifted off, Daniel slumped against the wall, exhausted. Serathis stood at the viewport, watching the empire she once ruled shrink behind her. Her hand rested on her stomach, and for the first time in her life, she did not feel like a queen. She felt like a mother. Serathis looked at Daniel, her golden eyes filled with something new. "Hope. We are not running. Asterisk, 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 we are building something new. And the galaxy would never be the same again." The end.